improvement since I started. But at the same time, I would agree with the lady that was sitting over there that spoke up, that the change comes about very slowly. And I think particularly important is how do we deal with the higher levels of leadership and the people who come in, as political appointees and have, they don't understand how the system works. They don't understand the issues. And they come in thinking that they're going to make these grandiose changes without understanding, the inner workings of the system and why it is the way it is. And I think that a key action that needs to be taken, and I know AFSA has been working on it, plugging at it continuously, at least at our end, is the fact that we need to get them on board to understanding it. It's not just that we're a bunch of Foreign Service officers with bad habits that need to be reformed because all we do is complain and whine. Get them out there, go have them live overseas for 5 years and, if their spouse isn't employed or, their kid has a learning disability or their child, has a medical issue that there's no way that you can get resolved at post. All these are things that need to be taken into account, and I just don't think a lot of the people at that level just even truly have a sense of that. So first of all, I wanted to thank you for all the hard work that you're doing, but also to remind you that there's a lot of other U.S. government agencies out there besides state, and you guys set the pace. The ambassador is, chief of mission when we're at post, and whatever happens at State Department spills over in terms of the morale of all the other U.S. agencies that are working along with you. So again, thank you, and to keep all those other agencies in mind.
Thank you very much. Does anyone on the panel have any thoughts or comments to address these questions? Diana?
We talk about the military and what all they offer and how we should look to them a lot, but funding is very different in their budget. Right. And I think that's something we haven't mentioned is it's great all they do for their deployed military, but when we're getting such a huge budget cut, the resources make a difference.
Their budget for supporting families, I think, is larger than the State Department budget in its entirety.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I wouldn't be surprised. Yes, Steve?
Then why are there so many commercials to support military families? So many what?
Commercials to support military families, right.
How come there aren't any for the Foreign Service?
They're building political support for it through TV and ads and public conscience because they have the money.
Yeah. Steve?
Steve has a lot of these other work-life programs, aren't they no cost, like alternative work schedules?
Alternative work schedules, yes. You're 40 hours a week, so there is no cost to that. It's just the manager, overcoming the manager's objection to it.
Well, I expect some of these people in the room will be ambassadors one day, and there's their opportunity to affect change, make a change at their post. After all, I was supported wholeheartedly by my ambassador, Connie Morella, who raised 2 families, so she knows just what I was doing. So that's what my wife. So, it starts at the top, right? The top can be the post.
Right. Yeah. You had a comment
Well, just I heard something really interesting. Someone wrote in about the article I have in this month's Foreign Service Journal. It was a former colleague from Japan, from Tokyo, who's now the head of the political econ section in Singapore. And he's always been a big believer in this topic. Interestingly enough, we never spoke about it at Post, and I thought about him mostly as a baseball guy. But in any case, what he did when he got to Post is basically determined that they could do things a better way through a flexible work arrangement. And so they didn't try and do telework, which can be much more difficult to overcome some of the barriers. But they basically had a buddy system where 2 people covered 80 hours in a 2-week period. And they could cover it any way they saw fit as long as the work was done and there was always someone to contact if there was a problem. And apparently it's working beautifully. And I thought it was just brilliant. But it took him, selling his ambassador, and he was obviously a very talented and very well-respected officer to be able to sell it. But it's working well, and I think he has a continued support to continue doing that.
Margot, is that happening now?
Yes, I just learned about it.
So I just learned something, because my former boss is the management officer there.
Oh,
Yes, Jim Forbes.
oh,
I'll call him up.
okay. Wait, in Tokyo or in Singapore? This is someone I knew from Tokyo.
Oh, I'm
who saw
sorry.
my article
Okay.
and said, I remember you from Tokyo. Here's what I'm doing now.
Is it
But in Singapore?
Joel? Is it Joel?
Yeah,
It's
Here-
Joel.
yeah.
Just
Wow.
one little
Amazing.
comment on that. OPM has the types of flexible work schedules that are available are prescribed. And that isn't one of them.
That isn't what it is.
Okay, sorry.
Well,
There are a lot of flexible work arrangements. And, you know, if somebody came to me and said, we'd like to do this, I would have to say, well, that isn't on the list. In fact, bureaus can establish, there's a laundry list of flexible work schedules that's in the it's out actually in the FA, hours of work. And bureaus can choose from any of those. Credit hours is the most flexible one of all. And that's a little difficult to do overseas, if not impossible, because of limitations in the payroll system. But it's a bureau-driven option.
But maybe I haven't represented it well, because I know he told me they looked at the FAM.
Okay,
Yeah.
it could be that,
So-
it fits in perfectly well, just hearing it, it doesn't. But there is a list, if anybody's interested in a flexible work schedule, look in the 3 FA under hours of work. Can't remember the exact number, and they're all there. You just check with your bureau to see which ones are offered.
Well, you have to have your managers.
Yeah,
To get the manager to agree with, that's always the most difficult thing. And the same with telework, this is, people are so used to eyeballing somebody, and they think that if they're not eyeballing them, they're not gonna be working, so. There's a question.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Paul Gradden, I'm a newly minted FSO and also.
Yeah, do you want to bring your
Sure, I'll try and speak up too, I think
I can hear you
Okay.
better in a minute.
Partly for the camera.
Well, that's kind of why Hi, Paul Gradden, I'm a newly minted FSO and also newly married, so this topic's a little bit daunting. I'm half of a tandem, so it's fairly complicated. But I have a question perhaps for my two colleagues on the end, a two-part question really. Did you ever find an aw shucks moment in your career where you're like, okay, life's got to come first before work, before career? And how did you kind of come to that realization, or maybe you didn't? And then the second part, and this is kind of a specific question, is my understanding is we have a lot of representational events, a lot of extracurricular activities, and how have you found that to fit into your work-life balance? So, thank you.
You said the name's Paul?
Yeah.
Yeah, Paul. Maybe a surprise to you, but a lot of foreign service officers describe their careers as like 2 wheels over the edge. My wife and I, we lived a life of many scary moments, but the scariest was perhaps this news in Paris. We did have some earlier difficulties, medical with the job, but I think what the shocks moment was the realization I needed to develop an exit strategy, and I took to night school and ABD dissertation, so that if things ever got so bad, if I just couldn't swing that assignment where my child could be protected, I'd have to just call it quits. I mean, we love the Foreign Service, it's a very important mission, but there are other meaningful careers outside of the Foreign Service. Sorry, Ian, I promised I wouldn't get into that, but again, being the commercial guy, of course you hear me say that. There are lots of ways to conduct foreign policy in and outside government, but I just would recommend that not put all your eggs in one basket.
And there's a second part to the question. The representation events, yeah. Yes.
Well, I'll take the all shucks moment first. I think for me it was coming back to a very large and busy post with not just one, but 2 children. And thinking, I had worked in Silicon Valley before joining the Foreign Service, so I had seen other ways things could be done. And I thought, well, this is a unique opportunity. I'm going to propose a flexible schedule for myself. And it was really like, meeting the immutable force. I mean, it just couldn't have gone any worse. And it was a shame because I was told, I'll sell it to our second level boss, only to find out that person actually torpedoed it with the second level boss, so it wasn't going to go anywhere. And I think you are going to have those moments. I mean, unfortunately, and I think, as Steve said, at some point you have to really look at, is this the right career? And I think we do ourselves a disservice